Hey, good morning there, sweet peas. Basic Prepper Mom Myra. Want to talk about difficult conversations to have with your family, whether it's with your entire family, depending on how old they are, age appropriate, of course, or whether it's with your significant other, or whether this is a conversation that you need to have just with yourself, depending on what living situation you are in. Now, my husband and I have had this conversation briefly, I will admit briefly, because wasn't going quite the way that I needed it to go, or we needed it to go. So we just kind of just stopped it, and we'll revisit that later. But when you are talking about preparing stuff and being a preparedness type person, there comes a point where you have to make those hard cuts or those hard lines. Let me explain. When I first started on this venture, I had this amazing idea that I was going to get a piece of property, and that was going to be the quote-unquote bug out location, whether it was in the state that I'm currently in or whether it was out of state. We were actually looking at property out of state that was not too far, probably about a 3-hour drive from where we're at right now. Property was very isolated, very secluded. It was about 40 acres. It did not have any amenities on it, any utilities whatsoever, but it had potential. And there was a few things about it that I really liked, and I thought this would absolutely work for an amazing bug out location. I thought. My family was not very much in agreement in that, so we did not get the property. But at the very beginning of this, I sat down with a piece of paper and I wrote out all of those friends and family members that we would let know that we, where this property was located, basically. Like, hey, this is the bug out location. If something happens, if crap goes down, come to this location. We got you. We got you, fam. We got you. And in making that list, it was a lot of people. And I went, okay. Everyone, with the exception of maybe one family, maybe two. I'm trying to think here of who I even originally had down. Everyone else was just people, friends, family. None of them, like I said, with the exception of maybe one or two families, maybe, were not preparedness type people. So basically, I would have all of these people showing up on my doorstep, and I would be responsible for providing everything to them: food, water, medication, first aid, defense. I would be the one to provide everything for all of these people. Now, when we talk about all of these people, on my list that I had down, I had I want to say 60 to 65 people. And I thought, okay, it's a lot of people, but it's okay. Each one of those people, I was able to find something that they would be able to contribute to the community, right? So somebody maybe was even an educator, somebody I knew had firearm experience. Somebody was really great at growing things. Somebody had first aid, whatever the situation, right? I knew that they had things that they could, be okay with. The problem was, I also knew that none of them would be bringing food or water with them. And I started to get a little concerned, and I was like, okay. And I started looking into calorie counts per person per day normally. Then I started looking into foods that provide those calories for those people. Then I started looking into water needs, like your basic water needs per person. I started calculating all of that out. I kind of went into a panic attack because the amount of food and the amount of water was a big one for me. Like food, I'm like, okay, we could, if somebody had to live on rice and beans okay, we could do that. Water was the one thing. And this particular property did not have a water source at all. So water was one of those situations that I was like, I could not store up enough water for 60 plus people for even a month. I mean, that is a lot of water if you start doing the calculations. So then I had to start thinking about, okay, cutting back. Or did I contact those families and say, hey, if something happens, this is where you go, but you need to bring with you a minimum this water, minimum this food. Well, there were people that were on my list that, like I said, were not preparedness type people and just didn't want to have anything to do with it. Just kind of don't want to think on those lines. They just don't want to talk about it. Oh, it is what it is. It's fine. And I thought, yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not a possibility. So I realized pretty early on that we were going to end up with a very small amount of people. And the more I started preparing for whatever scenario, the more I realized that the 6 people in my family that live with me were going to be a lot to stock up on and to provide for. And realistically, I don't think I could prepare for even 10, 15 people showing up at my doorstep, let alone 60 plus people. So I think we need to really have hard conversations with our families and say, if we end up in this, where do we draw the line? Because my husband has a very large extended family. We don't have a lot of contact with pretty much any of them. Maybe a couple here and there. A couple of cousins that we absolutely love. But other than that, we don't. But they're still family. So where do you draw that line of somebody showing up at your doorstep and saying, hey, I'm family. I'm not just a friend. I'm blood. You're going to turn me and my kids away? How are you going to handle that situation? And I know that a lot of people talk about that, and it's really simple to say, no, I can't. It's easy to say that now, but if you're in that situation, if you're in that scenario, where do you draw that line and how do you do that? So I think that's the conversation that we need to have, the very difficult conversation that we need to sit down and talk with our families and say, we need a plan. Because realistically, we cannot let in all of these people and provide for them. So where do you draw the line? Who do you draw the line with? And how do you go about that? We have since bought a piece of property. It's in the state that I'm in. And we've told very few people that we even have property. And we've told very few people where the property is. Haven't told them, maybe 3 people we've told the exact location. But even then, I doubt they would remember where it was because it's pretty secluded and it's pretty out there. And it's not, definitely not easy to locate, just like, oh, I'll drive around, see if I can see their vehicle. Yeah, you won't be able to do that at all. So have those conversations with your families, and draw the line. But more importantly, sit down now and make your list and go, okay, those family members that we know that we're going to provide for, those family members that we know that we're going to let in, or friends, or whatever the situation, and start really looking at your calorie counts and your water needs specifically, and figure out per person what you need to have in your possession to be able to provide for all of those people. Or do you have a deal that you are going to let these people in and basically bug in with you, but they're going to provide stuff? And maybe have that conversation now and say, look, if something happens, you are more than welcome to come to our house. We will help. But if something does happen, these are the minimum requirements that you need to bring with you when you come to us. And I don't think it's outrageous to ask for. So that is it for today. Figure out right now, before it happens, just figure out, and you don't have to like let everyone know, oh, by the way, you're on my list, but you're not on my list. Definitely don't do that. But just know that you guys have a plan in place, and that's part of the plan, right? It's part of having that emergency plan of what's going to happen and what's going to go on. All right. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. I did get a really great deal. I think it's a really great deal at one of the big box stores that I happened to find. And I will share that with you guys later. But for right now, hope you guys have a wonderful, amazing day, and I will talk to you later.